As a bit of housekeeping, remember, if you're not dialed into the teleconference, you can listen to the webinar by going to Communicate and then Join Audio Broadcast. Sorry about that echo. And with that, I'm just going to pass it over to Julia. As Julia sets up, I just want to remind you guys to please put any questions you may have in the question and answer window, not in the chat window. It's much easier for us to address if they're in the Q&A box, and we will address all questions at the end of the session. So thank you for joining us, and with that, I'll pass it over to Julia.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Hello. As Becky said, my name is Julia Stiglitz, and I am on the Google Apps for Education team. And I'm also a former 4th grade teacher, and I'm very excited to share with you my favorite 32 ways that I've been seeing teachers use Google Apps for Education in the classroom. Like Becky said, this session is going to be jam-packed, and so I'm going to share the presentation with you, and you'll be able to go back in more depth through everything that we go over today. So to begin with, the 3 main things that Google Apps brings to classrooms are efficiency, it increases collaboration, and then it also increases engagement of students. And as we go through the 32 different ways, you'll see these 3 things come up again and again. Either it's going to increase the efficiency of a teacher practice or teacher process, it'll help increase or support collaboration among teachers, and lastly, it could help support engagement of students. I'm including here a bit.ly link to this presentation. You should feel free to take this presentation with you, use it in your districts, use it in your schools. I've attached other webinars to it as well, so this can be an ongoing resource for you. And just as a note, it's a capital O, not a 0, at the end of the bit.ly link. So I'll give you just a minute to jot that down. And maybe Becky can put it into the chat window. Okay, so as you're all familiar with, these are the tools that come with Google Apps for Education: Gmail, Talk, Groups, Calendar, Docs, Sites, Video. And I'm going to go through several of these tools and talk about applications within each of them. So the first that I'm going to talk about is Google Docs. And Google Docs is really the heart and soul of Google Apps for Education. Of all the tools, this is the tool that has the most incredible benefits for educators. And my absolutely favorite use case is probably the simplest, and that's just using a Google Doc to collaborate on lesson planning. You know, as educators, we all want to collaborate, but it can be really hard given the confines of the school day and given the structure of a school where you're all in your own individual classrooms. And Google Docs allows you to collaborate. So if I go here to this lesson plan, let's see if I can pull it up. And I look right now. I don't have. I could be typing. And at the same time, if I have a colleague come into this lesson plan, she could be typing or he could be typing at the same time. And when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about real-time collaboration, where you can see every single letter that your colleague has typed as they type it. You could also write comments, as you can see the comments here, about the lesson. So this is, again, like the simplest use case, but the one that I think has the biggest benefits for education. And I'm going to come back to this one in a little bit when my colleague's on it as well to just show you the power of these collaboration tools. Another great way to use Google Apps is for staff meeting or grade level meeting notes. So I know from my grade level meeting, we used to have to write the meeting notes and then photocopy it and then put it in the mailbox of all of our colleagues as well as the principal. And it wasn't a good use of time, and it wasted paper. Instead, you can just have a running Google Doc and every week write the meeting notes in there and then share them out with your colleagues. Another way is using the Google Docs list as a shared lesson repository. So if I go here we see a Google Docs list. You could create collections for your 4th grade team, and then you could share out your lesson plans or other curricular resources with that team, and you could have it housed just in your Google Docs list. So this can become like a virtual intranet. Another one of my favorite ways that Google Apps is being used is to change the writing process. So if we look here, we're looking right now at a fairy tale that was written by some 3rd graders, Molly and On. And in the traditional model of writing, where we're teaching writing, a teacher just gets what we see right now, grades it, and then gives it back to them. They might do their revisions, and then they grade it again, but that's about all a teacher gets. With Google Docs, you have the revision history.
We're just going to pause 1 second. I'm hearing some feedback about some technical issues in regards to sound. And I'm hoping that solves it. We usually don't have the host and the panelists in the same room at the same time. Okay, great. It just became understandable. Well, glad to hear that. Okay, thank you, Julia.
Okay, so, and we can go back to at the end towards the first way to make sure that everybody heard those, because that was, as I said, that was the most important way that Google Apps is being used. But to dive right back in, what we're looking at is a fairy tale that was written by 2 3rd graders. And the traditional model, all the teacher sees is the end product that these students created. But with Google Docs, you can see the entire history of the document. So every time anyone touched this document, you're able to see it. So we can start here, and we see Molly began writing the fairy tale on October 12th at 11:53 a.m., and she wrote some gibberish. And then it looks like Molly went back in later that day, and she was really inspired, and she wrote a lot. And then we go here, and it looks like Aunt contributed. Well, she contributed a little bit. She contributed her name, and she changed the spelling of meow. So all of a sudden, a teacher has insight into the entire writing process that the students have engaged in. And the teacher can hold students appropriately accountable if they're doing collaborative work. A teacher, you could also imagine going back into a document and finding gems that a student wrote, but that maybe they went over in another draft. So this revision history it's a very powerful feature, and probably one of the most favorite features of teachers and the least favorite features of students. Another thing that you can do with the Google Doc is, because you can share it out, you could share this doc not just with the students that are working on it collaboratively, but you could also share it with parents so that they become involved in the writing process as well, and so that it's not just the dynamic of teacher-student, but rather it's a collaborative process, and you can bring other students into it or parents into it as well. And then finally, when the student is done with this, it's very easy to publish. You could publish this out onto a Google site, or you could just share it out with the whole class. And knowing that their document is going to be shared and read is extremely motivating for students. There's a case study that I included here that goes into more depth on how to use Google Docs to improve the writing process. Another way that Google Docs can be used is for reading response journals. So I remember when I was a teacher lugging composition notebooks that looked exactly like the one that you see in the picture there every weekend into my car, and there was 32 of them, and it took an enormous amount of time to go through. And if I didn't write the comments on them and hand them back right away, the students wouldn't read for that week. So being able to just go into a Google Doc and write students' comments on their reading on an ongoing basis can really make that process easier. Another way is being able to translate letters home for parents. So this is a letter that is for the beginning of the year that a teacher wrote. And if you have any English language learners, you're going to want to send that letter home in their native language. So with Google Docs, it's as easy as going to the translate document, which this is actually, looks like this one is, I'm going to actually pull it up from my docs list. Here it is. Letter. So here's a parent letter, and I'm going to Tools, and I go Translate Document. And as you can see, we have a ton of different languages that you can choose from. So many of the languages that your students might speak could be covered. So we'll translate it into Greek. I haven't translated something into Greek before, so I'll do that. And voila, you have a translated Greek letter of for your students. And it's not going to be perfect. I wish I could read this letter. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be enough to get over the language barrier. It'll be enough for the parents to be able to understand what you're trying to communicate, and enough for the teacher to feel comfortable sending these letters home to their parents. Another way is using a Google spreadsheet to track student homework. So basically what this is taking the sticker star chart that teachers have on their wall to track homework and putting it onto an online format. And what this teacher has done here is they've given each student a number to anonymize them, and then they've shared the spreadsheet out with the parents, the whole class. And so the parent whose student is number 5 can look and say, oh, it looks like my student didn't do their homework for the last 3 days. And they're able to get that information on an ongoing basis. So it increases the amount of communication that parents and teachers can have. Another way is using it for sign-up sheets. I know that this was always a big headache when I was in the classroom trying to schedule my 32 parents into all the time slots. Using a Google spreadsheet, you can share a spreadsheet with them with the different times, and parents can come in and sign up for a time that works from them. If that time is already taken, as you can see, Tuesday, 1 o'clock is already taken by Becky Coleman, then they'll have to sign up for another time. So it's just an easy way to get parents to sign up. Another great way is using Google Docs, using the spreadsheet specifically for a science experiment. So this example is actually taken from a class in Illinois, and this class was doing an experiment on the impact or the effect of acid and normal rain on the height of plants, and then also on the number of leaves that plants would have. And in the traditional model, the traditional schooling model, this group of students right here would write their findings, collect their data in a composition notebook, and then at the end they would graph their individual findings. Instead, what this teacher did was have the entire class collect the data through a Google form, and that form is shown right here. So all of the students were using the same form, so across the multiple groups and the multiple classrooms, all that data was collected in one source. So already we're seeing a difference between the old model and the new model. The students are working with a lot more data than they would have been. And that data is collected here from the Google form. Then this teacher decided to take it one step further. So already the teacher has given students access to more data. The teacher decided to insert something that we call a motion graph. And that's a gadget, which is, if you go here, and this is the gadget that they added to the spreadsheet. And what a motion graph allows you to do is analyze 5 variables at the same time. So what the teacher and the students wanted to analyze was, what was the impact on the plant's height with acid versus normal rain. And we also wanted to look at the number of leaves. So the size of the circle is going to grow as the number of leaves grow. And as the plant grows across time, we'll see the graph go up. So let's play and see what happens. So as you can see with the normal plant, it's getting taller, and also the number of leaves are growing. And then the plant that had acid rain, it grew a little bit. The number of leaves doesn't really increase, and then ultimately it dies. So again, this is one of the ways in which Google Apps is being used, and it's also one of the ways that you're seeing our engineers and our product managers thinking about these applications differently, that they're finding some really neat ways to add features into these products that are useful to our customers. Another way that we're seeing it being used is through a Flashcard Center. So this is another gadget. This is through spreadsheets. They inserted a gadget, and there's actually a flashcard gadget. So in lower elementary classrooms, we're seeing teachers create a center with computers in which they have students work on flashcards. I've included here some ways for you to try it, so you can play around with this. And also, if you want to learn more, I've included a link to the Google Apps for Education Training Center to learn more about Google Docs and how to do the different things that I showed you. So going into the next application, this is Google Forms, another favorite application on Google Apps. If you could please go to this bit.ly, actually not this bit.ly link, sorry. If you could go to, let's see, it's actually bit.ly, if Becky, if you could type it in, it's bit.ly /baseball quiz. Are you there? So if you're in the audience, if you could just go to that link that's typed into chat, it's bit.ly, bit.ly, and it's what you should see looks like this, and it's a form that's a quiz about who's going to win the World Series.
It's in your chat window.
In your chat window. So if you can just click on what's in your chat window. And I can see that we have some people in Boston, some Red Sox fans that are filling this out. Okay, we have one other Giants fan. And as you can see, wow. So what we're seeing is as soon as you enter in that data, it's automatically populated into the spreadsheet. And I just sent you out a Google form, which is really easy to do. Colorado Rockies with 2 exclamation points. Angels. So you see a bunch of responses here. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that it has a timestamp. Another thing that you can do when you're doing a Google form is you could require that there's a name stamp. So if you have a Google Apps for Education domain, then you can require that everyone's name from their email address be stamped onto that as well. So you would see my name, for instance, Stiglitz, associated with this first one. So we look here, and we just collected 58 responses in the last few seconds, and I have all of that data here, which I could analyze, I could make graphs with, I could do a lot of things with, and it was very, very easy for me to do and collect and then now have 64 responses. And so automatically, if you haven't seen the Google Forms before, your mind is probably turning and thinking about all the different ways that this could be used in the classroom. And there are so many ways, and I'm just going to touch on a few of them, but you'll probably think of many more on your own. So one of the ways is using this as a formative or summative assessment. So if you have a one-to-one program, or if you have smartphones in your classroom or tablets in your classroom, you can use a Google form to give students a pre-assessment. So see what they know about what you're teaching them that day. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the lesson, you can see what they learned. And it's a really easy way to collect that data. You don't have to enter it in. You can just analyze it right there. Another way is using it to collect interest surveys. So what are students' strengths or weaknesses, or what are they interested in? And you can do that just through using a Google form. Another way in which you could use a Google form is for observation forms. So this is an example of a principal-teacher observation form where a principal is walking from class to class and collecting data on the teacher. You could also use this for students. So you could have the form so that you can observe different behaviors that a student is doing and collect that information in a really easy way into the Google form. Online reading records. Again, it's just thinking about all the different paper processes that you as a teacher have in your day, or you as an administrator have, and thinking about ways to make your life easier by using a Google form. And online reading records is a simple way. It's a simple paper that students hand in every day or every week, and you could make that easier just by having it collected through a Google form. Tracking discipline referrals. Many schools use half sheets of paper to collect discipline referrals, and you have to go to the office and fill it out. Instead, teachers at a school could just use a Google form and have all that data captured centrally in one spreadsheet. And that makes it much easier to look at it throughout the day. If there's one particular student that's particularly challenging, A teacher could go in and see if he's been referred by another teacher. It's just another easy way to make that process smoother. Several other ways you can collect information from parents or teachers. You could use it for spelling tests or multiplication tests, and you could also use it to collect science data. If you're already a pro at using Google Forms, one way that you can make the forms even better would be to add some app scripts to the form, and you could do things like make self-grading quizzes, or having an automated response come when you sign up for a form. So that's for those of you that are already very familiar with Google Forms. You can take it even one step further. And I've attached here on the presentation a link for an introduction to Google Forms webinar, and then also an advanced Google Forms webinar, and then also a link to our training center. Google Calendar. Okay, so this is another one of our applications, and I'm going to go to our calendar, and I'm going to take off all of these. So what we see right now is my basic calendar. This is for this demo right now. I'm Jeff at G1 USD. And this teacher, Jeff, you can see all of his classes that he's set up. This is his school calendar. But Jeff has more going on with his life than just what's going on at school. So Jeff can also have a personal calendar. And Jeff could make this calendar public so that everyone else can see it. So you can see if Jeff's in English class or math class or has lunch. But perhaps he doesn't want everyone to know that he goes to the gym at 6:30 in the morning or is going to Jane's baby shower. And that calendar he can keep private. You could also overlay your colleagues' calendar, so Miss Franklin's calendar or Miss Smith's calendar, and you could use that to see when you can schedule events. So you can see that Miss Smith is free during this time, and you could schedule a meeting with her, or maybe with Miss Stevens. You can schedule that. And you can also overlay a standards map. So you could here we have standards mapping at the very top, and you can see that these are the standards that you have to cover. This could be shared out district-wide, or shared out as a school, or shared out as a grade level. And you can even, within Calendar, you can attach things to a calendar invite, so you could attach what those standards look like, an example of those standards, or an example of the lesson plans that you're teaching. And that's just by adding an attachment here. You can also use it for shared resources like the library. So here what this school has done is they've given a calendar to the library, and you can just schedule a meeting essentially with the library in order to schedule time with the library. You could also use it for laptop carts in order to check out laptop carts. And there's also just some fun calendars that are down here. So I saw that there was at least 2 Giants fans that were on this webinar. So those two Giants fans, you could have right here, and this is pulling information from the web and putting it into the calendar. So there's, if we look at browse interesting calendars, whatever your favorite baseball team was, you could add it there, or holidays. Okay, going back to calendar, we can also add U.S. holidays here and see that it was Mother's Day. So that's calendar. Let me go back over here. And there's more information that I've attached here in the training center that you can go back to use the calendar. The next app that I want to talk about is Gmail. And Gmail here is a Gmail account. It can do all the normal things that you would expect Gmail to do. But it also has a couple of really neat applications that I want to show you. One of them is Gmail Labs. So if I go here and I go to Labs, it's loading. These are features that are not completely rolled out yet. They might be in beta form, or some of them are going to eventually be rolled out. Some of them never will get rolled out. But they're neat features that you can add on to your your Gmail. Let me try to get there again. Here we are. So I'm going to show you a couple of my favorites. One of my favorites is undo send, right here. So let's say you send an email and you realize that you spelled the person's name wrong, or you realize that you forgot to attach something. You have a few seconds to undo send, so make it so that it wasn't sent. That's one nice lab feature. There's a feature called, another nice one is Yelp, which is actually less relevant for the classroom, but it is relevant to make sure that you like the restaurants that you're going to. So if somebody sends you a dinner invitation, you can see what the rating of the restaurant was using the Yelp preview in mail feature. But the one that I really want to talk about that is most important for classrooms is message translation. And I see that it is already enabled. So it's already enabled. I'm going to go back to my inbox right here. And let's say now I get a letter from a parent, and the letter's in Spanish. Because I've enabled message translation, Gmail knows that this letter is in Spanish, and right there within the body of the email, I can have this email translated. And again, the translation may not be perfect, but it's good enough to understand what the person writing it was trying to say. And this works, again, for all those different languages that we showed you before. Because Google Apps, you can provision it to students, teachers, as well as parents. This can serve as a good way to communicate with parents that are non-English language speakers. Another way that this can be used, Gmail, is for pen pals. So having global pen pals, and the students don't even need to speak the same language. You can have them write to each other in their native language and then just use Translate. I've attached more information on using Gmail in a webinar in terms of becoming a Gmail ninja right there on this presentation. Okay, so the next application that I want to talk about is Talk. And I'm going to go back into my Gmail. One of the nice things about Talk is that you can see right here, you have a presence. So you can see who's online and if they're available. So I see my colleague here, Jamie, he's online, but it says that it's red, so he probably doesn't want to be disturbed. Let's see if I can find my colleague, Becky Evans. I'm going to invite her to chat. Oh, there she is. Okay, so I see that my colleague Becky is there. So the first thing I want to do is just talk to her. So, hello, Becky. Hi, Jeff. I'm Jeff for the sake of this demo. Have you finished the field trip paperwork? So I see right here that Becky's typing, and she says no. So let's say I'm kind of upset about the fact that she has not finished the field trip paperwork, and I want to communicate that, and I can't communicate that just via chat. I need to video chat with her to communicate how frustrated I am that she has not finished the field trip report. So let's see. Oh, so there's me. And hi, Becky.
Hi, Jeff.
You have not finished the field trip report.
I know, I just got so backlogged with assessments and a disciplinary problem, but we can work on the doc together now. Sorry about that.
Sounds good. Bye. So that probably would have been a lot more effective if I wasn't smiling and if Becky wasn't sitting right next to me. But you could see that there are certain times where you just really need to be able to see the person that you're working with, and using video chat, which is just integrated with your Gmail, can help you do that. You can also use it to invite guest lecturers. So maybe Becky wasn't a teacher here, but she worked at Google, and I wanted to invite an engineer or someone that worked at Google into my class when I was doing this unit on science. It's as easy as inviting them through Google Chat, and all they need is a Gmail account, and they'll be able to video conference into your classroom. And that's a really neat way that we're seeing it being used. We've actually also seen some teachers use it to invite grandparents into their classrooms for story time, or relatives from out of town. And it's a really nice way to just widen the walls of the classroom in a very easy way. We're also seeing this being used, this was actually an example that came from Mayo, Ireland, and they had a record number of snow days. And so they were using Google Video Chat as well as the normal chat, as well as Google Docs, to essentially hold class while there was snow outside. And this article is funny because it talks about a little student who wanted to build igloos as opposed to working on his writing assignment in Google Docs. But regardless, they were able to continue to hold class even when they weren't able to go to school. You can imagine using this right before exams, having a teacher set up office hours on Google Chat or Google Video or through Google Docs. And it's, again, a nice way to extend the school day or extend students' learning beyond the walls of the classroom. And more information on using Talk is included right there. The next feature that I want to go to, the next application that I want to go to is Google Sites. And Google Sites is our website creation tool. But it's a really easy, and this is where some teachers get a little nervous about creating a website, but it's really, really easy to do, and you don't need to know HTML. So here's an example of a 5th grade site, and I'll actually take you to that site and show you just how easy it is. So here is Ms. Stevens' site. I actually don't think, I'm going to go back into my docs list and go to Ms. Stevens' site again. In just a second. While that's loading, I'll just talk through her site. So she's written some messages to her students. She's inserted a calendar, and she did this all probably pretty quickly. So once this loads, it should load in just a minute. Let's try to go there again. There we are. Okay. So here we see Ms. Stevens' site. And let's say she wants to change it. She doesn't like that she wrote welcome with that many exclamation points. She wants to delete that. Okay. She deleted that picture too. She didn't like the picture. And she wanted to finish writing this. Please contact the school for more information about the field trip. Great, so she edited that, and then as soon as she presses save, it is live on her website. So whoever she shared it with, whether she just shared it with her class, whether she just shared it with her school and the domain, or whether she shared it with the whole world, as this one is. This one's public on the web. As soon as she presses save and it goes through, then those edits are live. And it's just taking a minute to save. But once it's saved, that'll be there. The other thing that she can do is she can insert, you can insert a calendar. So the calendar that we were talking about before, we can see she can insert Jeff's calendar. Select that. Taking just a minute. And save. And just like that, she has the calendar inserted in there. She could also insert a Google Doc if she wanted to maybe publish that fairy tale that she was working on with those 3rd grade students before. She could publish it right on her website. And again, it's just as simple as going to edit and then going to insert document. This is being a little bit slow, but you can insert the document and it would just show up there as soon as you save it. I'm going to cancel this for now, just so that we can keep on going through. So another way that Google Sites is being used is for student e-portfolios. This example comes from Clemson University, and they're actually requiring all of their students to keep a digital e-portfolio. So there is a picture of the students. They might have some information on, it might have their resume, their professional experience, some general information about them. This one has their blog, but it's a digital portfolio of the students' work. And we're starting to see this become really popular in K-12 as well, where teachers are having students keep all of their work in a digital e-portfolio, and then they pass it on to the next teacher the next year. And you can see how the student grew. The students students can look back at their work and see everything that they've done. Another way that we're seeing sites being used is for student projects or reports. So this example was actually taken from the Google Global Science Fair, which is going on right now. And what it used was a Google site to do the science project. So instead of the traditional science project, which is done on those cardboard and then put into the gym, instead the project was done through a Google site, and then it's shared out with the world. So you could create any sort of student report or student project and have it done on Google Sites, and then share it out with just the domain, share it out with just the class, or maybe you should even share it out with the whole world and have people comment on it. And lastly, with Google Sites, another way that it's being used is for curriculum sharing. So having the school or the district use it to share the curriculum for the whole district. And the nice thing is that as an administrator, you can go in and change it and make the needed adjustments that you need to do over the course of the year. More information on Google Sites is here, as well as 2 webinars. If you're interested in creating a class site with Google Sites, there's a webinar right here on how to do it, as well as just Google Sites for educators in general. You can get that information there. Okay, so earlier this year, we launched Google Apps Plus, and that allows you to access any of our Google products through your Google Apps account. One of those products is Blogger. And I'm going to share with you this example that comes from a school in Los Angeles. And the teacher in the school is using Blogger to essentially run his class. So this is his blog, and he has at his school a one-to-one program. So every day his students come into the class, they pick up their laptop, they have his blog bookmarked, so they open it up and they see today's 49th day of class, and it tells them what standard they're looking at, it gives them the objective, and the first task here is to submit your homework. So the student clicks on this, which will take them to a Google form where they submit their homework. The next thing, there's a quick question that they answer, so this is kind of their warm-up, do-now activity, and they might answer this in a Google Doc, they might answer it in a Google form, they might use Google Moderator. There's lots of different ways that the teacher could do this. But the teacher has them do that there. The next thing that the teacher does is actually have the students close their laptops halfway. And the teacher does a traditional introduction to new material. The teacher may do even a traditional guided practice. But then when it's time to do the independent practice, he'll have the students go back to the blog, and maybe they'll use a Google Doc, or here there's lots of different online tools that the teacher has linked to that the student could then use to do their work. And then at the end, it looks like he's having them submit their project proposal for homework, and that's also linked here to the blog. So this is combining a lot of the tools that we talked about today and a lot of the different ways that we're seeing Google Apps being used into one blog that's essentially helping him run his class in a smoother way. The last example, the 30-second way that we're seeing, 30-second way that we're seeing Google Apps being used is through Google Moderator, and this example actually comes from the same classroom. So at the end of the day, that teacher, the same teacher that uses the blog, he has all of the students use Google Moderator to write their reflections from the class, to write what was the main thing that they liked about the class for the day, or what was their major takeaway. And then what the other students do is they read each other's responses and vote up the ideas that they like the best, vote up the answers that they think are most meaningful. And in talking to the teacher, what he's found is that it's extended the discussion beyond the classroom. So it's not just that the discussion happens in class and then ends. Rather, students are looking at each other's ideas and are evaluating them, are voting them up, and then continuing to have conversations around those takeaways outside of the classroom. So we have students from different periods that are looking at each other's ideas and really extending their learning. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and then I've also linked here to our own Google Moderator, which we can see over here, which you can use to fill out some more ideas. So I only did 32 ideas, but there's hundreds and hundreds of ways that Google Apps can be used in the classroom to promote student learning or increase efficiency of teacher practice or increase collaboration. And so you should feel free to share your own ideas right here through the Google Moderator. And I look forward to including some of them on the next iteration of this, which will be 33 ways to use Google Apps in the classroom. Thank you, and I'll open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. I'm sure you guys learned a ton because you have a ton of questions. So we have about 15 minutes to answer questions. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded, and I will upload the recorded version to YouTube and send out a link to you via your email, whatever email you use to register. The link to the webinar. We'll also send out the transcript of the Q&A session. So if you have to hop off, feel free to do so now. If you have any more questions, put them in the Q&A window. If we don't have enough time to get to your question, because I'm seeing that we have a ton of questions, look for the Q&A transcript tomorrow, and we'll be sure to type up your question and submit an answer tomorrow. So with that, I will begin with the first questions that were submitted. How do students select their font colors?
How do students select their font colors? Okay, so let's go to a Google Doc. We'll go back to the fairy tale. And you can see here, all they do is go to the A, and they could select green. Not recommended in this case, but they could do that. And there we have a green first paragraph.
And if you're referring to the colors in the revision history, so if you show the revision history really quickly, then those colors there that show, what student contributed what work are automatically assigned by Google. And it's taking a second to load up now, but the colors in the revision history are automatically assigned by the Google Apps program. So the next question is, can you please show us how to add comments?
Okay, so let's go to this example as well. And so we'll go to the context clue, and all we're going to do is insert comment, and then it's highlighting where the cursor was, so it was on writing, and I could say, great subject, and then I have my comment.
Great, thank you. Is it possible to have a collaborator write comments but not edit the document?
No, that's not possible. So if you give them, what that's referring to is their sharing privileges. So that there's different sharing settings. You can share it with someone and make it so that they can only view it, so that they can't edit it, or you can share it with them and make it so they can edit it. And in order to write comments, they also have to be able to edit it. So you can see here we have the owner can edit, and then we could also make it so Karen can't edit, she can only view. But those are the only two options.
So in order to have a sense of collaboration among colleagues, parents, and students, will all involved have to have a Gmail account, or will any email address be adequate?
You need to have either a Gmail account or a Google Apps account. So either one will work. It could be your consumer account or it could be your Google Apps for Education account, but they need to have one of those in order to be able to edit a document.
And obviously we recommend that if you're running a school or school district, you get a Google Apps for Education account because it's just easier to monitor and manage all the student accounts rather than having them use personal Gmail. Another question is the Translate tool already on the Tools menu, or is that a feature I need to add?
So for Gmail, the Translate feature needs to be added, and that can be done through Labs, which is just if you go to this little thing here, this gear sign, if you go to Labs and you add it. So that's how you add it with Gmail. But for Google Docs, it's already there for you. So if I go back here, it's under Tools, and it's in the Translate document.
Great, thank you. Another question is, how did you get that layout with Google Forms? So if you could just open a form maybe and show the different layouts you can choose.
Oh, great. Yeah, so if I go to create a Google form, so I go to my Docs list, create new form. Okay, there's themes. And there's all sorts of different themes that you can choose. So I'm not sure which one I chose, but there's tons of different themes which can make, especially if you're giving a math pre-assessment, you can make the assessment a little more fun by adding blockheads, for instance. So you can just use that and apply. And then if we test. Simple question. What is your favorite color? Blue. Red. Okay. So we're done here. We save it. Then if we want to go to the published form, what the form actually looks like, it's just down here. Oops. Looks like there's some sort of saving area. Oh, should we save now? You can go see what the form looks like, and there we have a form with the blockhead theme on it. Test. Blue is my favorite color.
Does Google do a transparent form theme? And no, not that I'm aware of. But if you are interested in designing one, you could try it. For spreadsheets, is there a pre-installed script to help you grade, like a grading book?
There actually, there is. It's something called Flubaroo, and next Monday, the professional development session is going to go into gradebooks, and we're going to look at 2 marketplace applications that are gradebooks, and then we're also going to look at the app script Flubaroo. So come back next week for a Flubaroo tutorial. But you can also just Google it. It's Flubaroo, and I think Becky's going to write it into the notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the Q&A transcript. Next question is, how do you manage standards map for each year? Does someone go in and create the schedule each year?
So it's really up to you, and it depends if you're doing it at the district level or the school level. I imagine you would need to do it every year to change, and you'd probably want to update it based on what the schedule is. But you could go through and in the beginning of the year, instead of or in addition to the standards maps that you hand out in hard copy, you could create a Google Calendar that you then share out with the whole school or school district.
As an Apps EDU school, how would you best share with parents? Would you recommend creating Apps accounts for them or just having them create public Gmail, Google accounts?
That's a great question. It sort of depends what your settings are. So some schools have it so that students can't share with anyone outside of their domain. So if that's the case, if you've closed the domain, then I would recommend giving parents a Google Apps account so that they can access the documents that are within the closed domain. If you haven't closed the domain, it won't make as big of a difference. So it's nice to know that the parents are have a Gmail or a Google email of some sort, so that you can share with them and communicate. But it really depends if you're closing the domain or if you have the domain open.
Great. Have you used Gmail for students under 13, and how do you monitor that mail?
We have seen districts use Gmail with. We have seen districts use Gmail with students even in kindergarten, and they choose to monitor it in different ways. One of the ways is by retaining their passcode, so that you can go in and check their passcode on an ongoing basis. We also have one district that actually is giving parents access to the accounts too. So they share the passcode not just with the teacher, but also with the parents, so that the parents can go in and monitor the students' accounts as well. In most cases with the younger grades, they'll close the domain for those students. So the kindergartners, for instance, while they can email each other and email other people in their school, they can't email the outside world.
Awesome. Is there a place where we can go and see really innovative examples of sites, not just in the gallery?
Let's see.
Well, we don't have a central repository, but if you just Google sites, then there might be some examples available online. I'm sure there are tons of examples available online. If you're listening and you have some very innovative ways that you're using Google Sites, please put them in the moderator. But as you can see, Julia here is doing a simple search for, Google Sites in the classroom, and we've gotten a ton of hits on ways that other people are using Google Sites.
Yeah, one thing I'll just say is one of the most amazing things, both in working on this team and just seeing Google Apps grow in the K-12 space, is that so much of this is driven by the teachers that are out there in the classrooms, and most of the ideas that I shared with you today, they're coming from real teachers that are working with students every day. And so we encourage all of you to share with us and share with each other, because that's where these ideas come from.
Great. So Google Moderator. Great tool, by the way. Is it a discussion forum? And then also, to add to that, can it be used independently or must it be used with Blogger?
So it doesn't need to be used with Blogger. It can be used independently. You can roll it out. It's one of the other Google Apps Plus applications, so it can be part of your Google Apps domain. It's a discussion tool in a way, in that you can submit ideas or submit questions, and ideas can be voted up. So we're looking here at an idea. If I wanted to, let's see here. So I can submit an idea. Actually, I'm going to submit a great idea. Let's say this is an idea, and I can submit it. And then other people can come in and they can say, "Oh, use Gmail to do global pen pals." That's a good idea. That you can click on that. And then this idea, great idea, that's not a great idea. So I can say, no, that's not a great idea. So it facilitates conversation. It's not, and you could add comments onto it as well, post a response. So I can say, no, this is not a great idea, and add a comment. That would be a nice comment, but it's warranted given that idea. So you can add a response and you can have a discussion through it, but it's not like a discussion tool the way in which a wiki or you could have in Blogger with comments.
Great. Is there a way to prevent users from submitting a form more than once?
No, not that I know of at this point.
A workaround for that is collecting the username of a person when they submit the form, and that way you can look at the spreadsheet and sort the results based on username. And so we're seeing that some teachers, what they'll do is they'll take the first answer that was submitted rather than any of the others after that.
And what we're looking at right now is a Google form, the test Google form that we used before that we made the blockhead theme with. And what we can see here is automatically collect respondents' G1 USD district name. If you have a Google Apps account, this doesn't work on the consumer side, but you can require that person's username be collected, so it's not anonymous, and you can see if somebody submitted something more than once.
So this is a good question. Is the information created through these apps, so let's say a Google Apps account, public, or can they be private?
They can definitely be private, and you can decide if you want all of the information. You can actually close the entire domain so that nothing at all is public, or you can do it based on individual applications. So for instance, this fairy tale app, if I go to the sharing settings, fairy tale doc rather. Okay, so I look here and it says right now anyone with the link can edit it, but I could change that. I can make it so that it's private, so only people that I explicitly grant permission to can edit or view it, or I can make it so that everyone in my district can see it with the link. So there's a lot of granularity in terms of how much and who you want to share documents with. That's one of the really nice features with Google Docs.
Great. So we're just about out of time, but I'm seeing a few questions about Moderator. The question is, how do we get Moderator turned on? And it's not something that an individual user can turn on. You have to go to your domain administrator and ask them to turn it on or off for your school if you're a teacher that does not have administrator access. As a reminder, this presentation has been recorded. If we did not get to your questions, I see that we have a ton of questions that we weren't able to address. We will make sure that we type them up in the Q&A transcript and send them out to you. So please look for that link in your email inbox tomorrow when we send out the recording of the webinar and the transcript for the Q&A session. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank Julia again for presenting to everyone, and have a great evening, morning, or afternoon, depending on where you are. Take care.